Welcome to ENCA, and the question also is directed to you in terms of understanding around this particular Supplier Development Initiative.
Yes, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Brad.
So, as Andile was starting to say, myself and Andile set up an initiative called Supplier Development Initiatives long before COVID. And then as a response to COVID, we decided to create a non-profit organisation called Supplier Development Initiatives Force, SDI Force. And in a response to COVID, trying to help the micro suppliers that we work with, first in terms of feeding the guys on the ground and then helping them get back to work. We work with micro suppliers like waste pickers, car guards, bolt drivers, and a lot of these traders, these small business people, went through a huge amount of hardship during lockdown. And so we started with a feeding scheme and then moved on to repurposing some of our small businesses like the waste pickers into spraying taxi ranks to fight COVID. And then we moved on to an initiative called Safe Passage, which I think is what you wanted to hear a bit more about with respect to the taxis.
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. Let's bring in Andile Ramaphosa back into the conversation. Andile, the key question that South Africans have, give it to us straight. Did you get to do this project because you are the son of President Cyril Ramaphosa?
Thank you very much for the question. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. I think what is vital, firstly, is that there was no government involvement. It was privately funded by FNB and Bridge Taxi Finance, who will come out with statements as well. And really it was us as citizens coming out and saying that there's a war. I mean, we're at a war against COVID. And myself as a citizen, never mind being first family and all of that, it's imperative that we get involved. And that's why we were out in the press and we're encouraging people, get involved, fight against COVID. You know, it's affecting all of us. We all have friends and even relatives that are sick. Some of us know people who have passed away. Our country's in a state of war, and it was our way of saying we want to get involved and contribute as private businessmen, as citizens, towards alleviating it. So there was no government involvement. There was no tender, nothing. In fact, let's get into it. How did it come about? What happened was, and that was Brad was alluding to, was when we realized the issue at hand, that COVID effectively is a mobile virus. That's why the lockdown worked. Lockdown, in essence, you prevent people from moving, you reduce the infection rate. But because South Africa needs its economy to open up and businesses to get back to work, the only other way to deal with it is actually through the transport sector, because that's the way that the virus is spreading. And so we looked at how do we create interventions that can mitigate and drastically reduce the spread of the virus cheaply, effectively, that can be sponsored by business, and we don't have to wait for government. We can get in there as private citizens and do our part. And that's what we started with, Safe Passages.
So if I could just come in there, Andile, you are saying that there was no interaction or agreement whatsoever with either the national department, the provincial department, nor the transport department to provide these PPE on their behalf?
No. In fact, what we did was we went to the city of Johannesburg, and we obviously told them what we were doing. They were supportive, and they allowed us to go into the taxis and in that way. But there was no tender or anything. The interaction we had with government actually was only purely from a scientific point of view. The doctors came in. We had all kinds of people, engineers, wind engineers. So you'll be shocked at the amount of work that was done to come up with such simple solutions that can save millions of people, as lives. So that's the reality. Those are the facts.
Brad, what's the take-up? What's been the Yeah, Brad, come in.
Sorry to cut you. Repeat.
No, I was saying, what's been the take-up in as far as the taxi industry is concerned? Andile is talking there about the simplicity of the technology involved. We know about the challenges in the taxi sector in terms of the regulations and the number of people that they are allowed to carry, the difference between, domestic local travel as well as the long-distance travel, and the challenge of opening windows slightly to allow for circulation of air. What's been the take-up and what's been the effect? Many people have been asking, for example, how come we've not heard of a taxi driver contracting COVID-19?
Okay, so before I get into that, just to add to what Andile said, part of the huge frustration, and I'll be straight, is that there has not been any real support other than FNB and Bridge Taxi Finance, and I'm proud to list them as sponsors of this. There has not been proper support for something which is as critical as the taxi industry and the taxi drivers and owners and transporting 12 million people to work plus in an environment where the World Health Organization has cautioned, which is that it's a trapped air environment unless you put interventions in place. And a few days ago, I think on the 10th or 11th of July, it was announced by the World Health Organization that there are findings that this virus is airborne. And quite shortly thereafter, President Ramaphosa announced that as long as the windows were open, whether you were full or not is not the issue. The real issue is the typical layers of interventions, airflow, separating the driver out, sanitizing hands. And to answer you, the support of the taxi drivers, the taxi associations, has been overwhelmingly positive. And I think part of the sadness here is that people have been, and I'm not saying taxi drivers are perfect, but they're business people, and they take people to work, and they play an absolutely critical role in our country. They take our staff to work, and they're the lifeblood of the country. They touch every part of South Africa. So how we possibly thought or think that we can beat COVID when we don't address how 12 million people get to work, that's the real outcry here that me and Andile and I have been pushing for weeks. We've even been on, I think, this channel and other channels, really trying to encourage people at very least for now to open their windows until serious money can flow to fixing the taxis. The 6 million rand of privately funded intervention that's gone into play here helps, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 school taxis and 1,000 work taxis on our pilot project, Alex to Santon. But we need 300,000 taxis urgently intervened on yesterday. And we've got to get together as a country, big business, solidarity, government, any small business adopting safe passages. This is a national crisis, and we've gone to number 5 in the world, where we've wear our masks, we went through hard lockdown and all sorts of pain. We sanitize hands. We, by and large, have done a great job. Even compared to countries like America, where it's a fiasco, we've done well, except for our commute system.
Right.
And we've got to address this.
Brad, I mean, the profile is quite impressive, and it does indeed, from what you're saying, sound like it's addressing the need. I think where we're coming from as well, just in terms of trying to get clarity on, this particular project, is just trying to have you answer on some of the concerns that South Africans have been raising. So I'll come back to you, Andile, because this clarity needs to be made. I mean, AfriForum then came out saying they have, approached the public protector just to check with yourself, Brad, as well as the Supplier Development Initiative, to ensure that everything has been above board. And I wanted to ask you if you have received any communication around any potential investigation around this particular initiative, which you have taken upon yourself in Gauteng, obviously for the taxi sector, and if you have responded to it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Currently, we haven't received anything yet, but we welcome it. In fact, I think that it's very good that they look into it. We anticipated, I'm a PEP, so we're realistic about it. We know that people would have been concerned about my involvement. So right from the onset of our involvement with SDI and forming it, there's a trust that was established that was totally independent of us. And that's actually where the funding went into. There's trustees, and there's a whole lot of governance that was put in place to make sure that there would be nothing untoward. In fact, we even have PwC on board as our auditor, who will even go and look at where the money went and once the program is completed. So we've held ourselves up to the nth degree in terms of governance and making sure that we manage ourselves well, because we want to protect the businesses that also come and want to be involved in alleviating the effects of COVID. So we welcome them. I mean, that's their prerogative. But please feel free to ask us those questions.
Sure.
But most importantly, though, let's address COVID effectively. And our countries at war let's deal with that.
Lastly, Andile, interesting that you used the phrase PEP, politically exposed person. It was on the 7th of March 2019 that your father, the President of the Republic, President Ramaphosa, disclosed that, the family had basically divested from the various businesses that he had previously been involved in, and basically outlined that his brother was involved in business, but that had nothing to do with him, and what business he remained in, it was in farming because he's passionate about farming. And then went on to say that basically the conversation within your family has been that no family is doing business with government now that, I've gone into office in this kind of way. What's your insights in as far, given also the context in which you said about the Busasa work that you did, that you said that you were making mistakes and learning as you grow as a business person. What's your input in as far as families of people who are political office holders and people who hold office in government those family members doing business with government in the context that I'm very sure you are aware of at the moment?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Not an easy one, but I'll say this. You're absolutely correct. We've had that conversation as a family, and that was something we did a long time ago, actually. It was always understood that we're politically exposed people and we shouldn't be doing business with government, and none of us are doing so. But so what has changed? And I like to joke with my friends that the only thing that's happened is I get a presidential spanking now. That's about it. My father's my father. And respectfully to his position in this nation as a country, we will obviously make sure that we respect him and his work that he has to do. Now, the difficulty around the PEP issue is that there's never been guidelines in the rule book, but you just use sensibility. I think that's the best test, is that, as a PEP, you should always be sensitive to the fact that this country has suffered a lot for many years. Issues of corruption, and you were discussing them even before this call, which have come to the fore. And our country is in pain. Our people are angry and frustrated. So we have to even govern ourselves even better as PEPs and be an example. The trust deficit between politicians and the public, big business and the public is there. It's there and it's glaring. And I think it's for leaders in all these spheres to take it upon themselves to be more responsible and to show the public that, in fact, we can be good leaders and we can deal with these issues effectively. Yeah.
All right.
Could I make a comment? Could I make a final comment just on that point?
Very briefly, please, Brad. Very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. So you said Andile has learned and so on. Let's just be clear. Andile Ramaphosa is not the one that received 500,000 rand from Busasa. He was labelled with that unfairly. All that he's ever said in terms of, you say, he's learned is he had involvement with them in projects in East Africa long before all of this and fired them as soon as the allegations came to fruition. All he's ever said is that he's learned that he's got to hold himself, and we hold ourselves to a higher level of accountability. We just make damn sure that we investigate people that we work with a lot more stringently. Yeah. But to lump us with that fiasco over a non-profit critical intervention right now is really unfair.
No, not at all, Brad. That was not even the intention. I was not even talking about the 500 million rand. I was talking exactly about what you are talking about, doing business with that particular company. I absolutely understood what the facts are.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you guys. Andile Ramaphosa and Brad Fisher there. Yeah.